Yo, what are you doing right now? We are going to get real about men's issues, who Jesus is, and who we are as men in Christ. We're going to hear Trey, Jeremy, Michael, and Brad break it down. These guys call themselves the Cussin Christians. All right, guys, what is going on?
The amount of humor you guys have in those situations is pretty...
They have to.
You have to.
Oh, you have to.
You have to. Otherwise, it's either pretty grim and very serious. People are dying around you, and death and destruction.
Yeah.
But you gotta maintain some sense of humor to survive.
Yeah. That's I don't know. I talked to my buddies. He's actually one of the guys starting the company with me. He did 4 tours over there. And,
oh wow!
He's with the Rangers. He jumped in and all that.
Yeah.
And he was telling me like some of the stuff they would do in between, like events, if you will.
Yes.
And,
exactly. We actually had a bar. We call it the Babel On Bar.
Babylon.
Oh, that's great.
Appropriate for being in Baghdad.
What was your call sign again?
Infidel. I chose infidel.
I kill you.
And I kill you. But my
He
chief,
does it better.
My
He's got the accent.
CIA Steve station
Oh my God, this
said
is
it was
gonna be amazing.
He said it was highly inappropriate, culturally insensitive, and I said, well, we are using it over CIA encrypted radios. If they can listen, if the bad guys can listen to us, then we really are in trouble.
is it more culturally insensitive than the bullets and missiles you send in their direction? I mean,
Exactly.
With their names written on them.
Isn't it culturally sensitive for them to call us infidels in the first place? I mean, come on.
Exactly. They should not be killing us.
Yeah.
Not like this.
Bullshit. That's very insensitive. All of the killing of people.
First off, episode 98. We're
Episode
closing.
98, yeah.
We're closing in, baby. We're going to be at 100 in a few weeks. A week ago, I got invited to go speak at a men's breakfast or luncheon, and I went up and I drew a huge crowd. There was 10 guys, and
Better than your usual draw.
yeah, that's right. I moved up a few.
was Donna with you?
Double digits.
No, I did not have my road crew with me. But in any case, when it was done, of course, that luncheon was right on the heels of what happened in Israel, and I want to get into that. And they just said, "Hey, Trey, what do you think about Israel?" And I said, "Well, let me open up my phone." I mean, that's literally what I did because I just don't know. I mean, it's a shame what I'm seeing, but who knows what's true. And I just looked at him and I said, I know who could talk to us about that. Mm-hmm. So he came in yesterday and spoke, and there was like 50 men in there yesterday.
Packed.
Wow.
And 52 with the 50 men plus 2 beautiful ladies.
I thought it was a free lunch.
That was my harem.
What happened? What happened to the free lunch?
It just
It's not a free lunch,
just
is
is
it?
metamorphosized into not that. So
Inflation.
yeah, C.I.A kind of ruined everything. C.I.A.
What those guys do to you?
They didn't do nothing. I'm talking about COVID, not C.I.A. COVID.
Francis, that's not you, buddy.
So that's not you, Francis. But it was COVID that kind of ruined it for everybody and things. Long story. Y'all get me down a rabbit hole. Cut this stuff
It's
out.
not hard.
It's so easy. Yeah?
Shut up. So anyway, I knew who to call, and I called my good friend Joseph Assad, who is a supporter of our ministry, believes in what we're doing. And you are, and on the 98th episode, you're our first ever guest.
Historic moment.
Yes, wow. This is big. But I'm going to butcher this background, but Joseph grew up in Egypt. His parents ran a Christian orphanage and ended up on a scholarship to go to college here in the United States at Palm Beach Atlantic, just down south of us. Was recruited and went into the CIA and spent 10 years in the Middle East as a counterterrorism. I like the word operative. It just sounds really cool.
If that fits your purposes, yes. But we call ourselves operations officers because it sounded cooler.
Oh, operation! I just think operative sounds covert. It's kind of. I watch too much TV.
I was going to say.
But Joseph, I am so glad you're here. You and your beautiful wife Michelle are just great friends, supporters of our ministry, and you've moved on to do some other things. But you're so plugged in, know the history of the area. And I just wanted to let's talk about what's happening in Israel now from, number one, a Christian perspective. What do we need to be aware of? Number two, geographical and history. And then in the number 3, what's next, or what's going on? Because you have some buttons that you can push to figure out some things, and I just thought this would be cool to have a discussion on. So welcome, man. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. It's an honor, and you have a great ministry, and you reach so many people, and I think it's fantastic to have fun, but also discuss some serious issues that impact our world and inevitably our community here. What happens in the Middle East no longer stays in the Middle East. It certainly has an impact on us, and particularly what we saw in the last 10 days or so in Israel. It's horrific.
Right.
It is unprecedented. It's not been seen since the Holocaust.
Yeah.
You mean the amount of deaths?
The amount of death, the manner in which Hamas went and attacked, and the brutality. Yes.
Yeah. Just brutal. I mean,
exactly. I mean, they went in and they chased families in their homes. Infants being taken and beheaded. Soldiers chased down and beheaded. But then, what really got me is that when you saw the concert, where hundreds of young people, teenagers and young people, it was a concert for peace.
Mm-hmm.
That was the theme of the concert. And yet they got chased down, taken down, and at least 200 or 300 of these young people, teenagers, brutally killed. Some of them taken and raped and taken back to the Gaza Strip as hostages. They took babies as hostages. They took grandmothers. And one of them that really got me was this Holocaust survivor.
Yeah.
Grandmother.
Oh, man.
That's right. Yeah.
In a wheelchair.
Right.
Who does that?
Yeah.
We have not even seen ISIS in all of its brutality has never reached this level of savagery.
Wow.
Yeah, they said by percentage, it's actually as big or bigger than 9/11 would have made an impact in the U.S.
Yes.
The amount of deaths,
Right.
compared to their population.
Right.
I read somewhere that it would be equivalent to like 35,000 Americans dying.
Easily.
Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Trey, you brought up a very good, important point, which is that historical context. Because, again, with the Middle East, everything is history. We have a very different sense of history in the United States or in the West than they do in the Middle East.
Right.
And these things are planned way ahead of time, and they hold these grudges for a much longer time. And this goes back to 1948, to the founding of the State of Israel on May 14th. The Arab countries and a lot of the Muslim organizations and terrorist organizations have vowed that they will kick Israel out. This is not just about a dispute over a certain piece of land. This is about the destruction of Israel, and Israel is cognizant of that. So when we watch, and we could talk about that later, but when we see Israel's response to all of this, and a lot of people saying, "Well, that's a little bit disproportionate." Well, Israel has vowed never again after the Holocaust. Unfortunately, never again has just happened.
Never again has just happened. Wow.
Yeah.
You talked about the planning and you talked about 1948, right? But yesterday you mentioned this brotherhood started much earlier than in the 1920s.
Yes, exactly.
Talk about the Muslim. Is it the Muslim Brotherhood?
It is a Muslim Brotherhood, or in Arabic we call it Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, and that started in 1927, 1928 in southern part of Egypt. You call it Upper Egypt because the Nile flows south to north, so Upper Egypt is actually in the south, and the organization was founded there by a guy named Hassan al-Banna, and the whole premise of the Muslim Brotherhood and the charter was to spread Islam all throughout the world, and that they call it Islam huwa al-hal. Islam is the solution, and their goal is to Islamize the rest of the world. Things went south with the Muslim Brotherhood following the Camp David Accords between Egypt and Israel in 1973. There was a war. Egypt did a similar war in Yom Kippur, and they went into the Sinai. And then President Sadat did the unprecedented step, historic step. He called for peace with Israel. He traveled to Jerusalem, an Arab Muslim leader of the most populous Arab nation in the world, Egypt. He traveled to Israel and signed a peace treaty. Well, he paid a dear price.
1981,
1981, he was assassinated by...
Wasn't that in a parade that he was assassinated in a parade?
That's great memory. It was.
Yeah.
It was a military parade.
He was in the stands saluting guys, and boom.
He stood up and he was saluting his own soldiers.
Right.
On the 6th of October, which is again the Yom Kippur, commemorating the war with Israel, but which then resulted in peace, and he was just he was gunned down.
Wow.
You had mentioned two factions: a faction of war.
House of War and House of Peace. That's
Thank
it.
you.
And that's where a lot of what we call fundamentalist Muslims or extremist Muslims, and particularly what you see Al Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, religiously speaking, because these have religious implications. These are not just disputes about land.
Right.
People have to understand this is a religious war.
This isn't and about a piece of property, right?
Yeah, this is a holy war, as they would call it, or a holy jihad, and that particular group of Muslims, they divide the world into two camps: the House of Peace and the House of War. Peace is Salam, which Islam derives its name from. So Islam means peace, and everybody else who's non-Muslims are in the House of War. So if you reside in the House of War, and that's not a choice, by the way. That is for you being a non-Muslim.
Because I'm an infidel.
Exactly.
Got it.
Or you're a Jew, or you are a Christian, or you're a Hindu. Everybody else is in a state of war against the House of Peace. You're like, well, but we didn't fire the first shot. You look at what happened in Israel. When there's outrage in the Muslim world that about what Israel is doing, well, any logical person can look at this and say, well, but didn't Hamas start the war?
Right.
In their minds, it is not. This war was started by Israel a long time ago. It was started by the non-believers. So, some believe that if I attack anybody who is in the House of War, it's justified.
It's justified.
Well, they think it's justified because if you don't believe in Islam, then you in a sense have attacked them,
right?
Because that's the only truth in their mind.
Right.
Exactly.
So if you don't believe that, then they see that as an aggression. So anything they do is justified in their mind.
Right.
So what I'm curious about, right, is like I have friends that they're Muslims, right? I worked at a company that we were basically 50-50 Hindu Muslim, and then there's some Christian in it, right, for a long time. I was good friends with these guys. Right?
Absolutely.
But I would never say they were in the House of War with me. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
I was close to them. I know their kids. I've been to their house.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because not all Muslims believe
Right.
that, right?
Exactly.
That's why we're saying. But it's unfortunately it is the most vociferous people, the loudest people that are hijacking the airwaves and media and propaganda are the extreme. Those who are moderate, those who don't subscribe to this House of Peace, House of War, who are Muslims, who are good Muslims, are also afraid
Oh,
Right.
I bet.
of these extremists. They say, well, if we speak up, we would be targeted.
Isn't it? It's in the Quran to kill the infidel. Is that correct?
And this is why Christianity went through a reformation, and there are some people even within Islam and Islamic thought are calling for a reformation within Islam. They're saying Islam and the early Muslims have acted in a way was more appropriate for the culture and for the geopolitical realities at the time. So there was a need for conquest. There was a need to kill the non-believers. Unfortunately, these words people get wedded to when they say, kind of people take a word literally. And you're like, okay, can you put it in a historic context?
Yeah, the context.
Right.
Of, yeah.
But the likes of Bin Laden and other horrible terrorists, they say, well, if the Prophet did it back then, therefore we are justified doing it today. And the way you kill an infidel is, or the non-believer or people who resist Islam, is you can behead them, you can expose their entrails. There's a particular way to do that. So our hope is in the moderate and reformist Muslims that want to take that and put it into context and not allow those extremists to hijack the religion. It's a Muslim's duty to defend their faith, not mine and not yours.
It's kind of like the difference between our Old Testament and the New Covenant. The
Right.
Old Testament,
There
we're
you
supposed
go.
to stone people.
Yes.
Would we be doing that right now if somebody committed adultery
No,
or stole,
absolutely not.
cut their hand off,
Absolutely
pluck an
not.
eye out? No, we're under the New Covenant.
Amen. Exactly.
Man. Well, you talked about the planning that's involved, and
Yes.
I got to admit, all right. So give me a little vision here, okay? I'm watching TV, and I see it. I'm horrified. I'm seeing these teenagers dancing and all that. And I see off in the distance these parachutes coming in. And one of those parachutes had a dude on a motorcycle, had a carriage next to him, and it had a tripod of a machine gun on it. And I looked at it, I said, I'm watching a Mad Max movie. I mean, that's the first thing I thought. This is Mel Gibson.
Yes.
And all that planning, but they're that primitive on some
and
things.
we know that the Palestinians and particularly Hamas did not have that kind of training or that kind of discipline or expertise. This is all Iran. If you want to understand what happened on that day and that kind of skill set, where the paragliders coming in through the water, they had threatened that we are going to attack Israel from land, from air, and by sea. And they did all of that. And they have been threatening to do this. I always tell people, pay attention when terrorists talk. They actually tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
They will tell you what they're going to do. Bin Laden said this before 9/11. He says, I will attack America by land, by air, by sea. He attacked Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, our embassies there, bombed 2 American embassies. Then they targeted the USS Cole in Yemen, killing 17 sailors.
That's right, yep.
And then we have one FBI guy. He's amazing. He's my hero. He's no longer with us. His name is John O'Neill, who sounded the alarm. He says, they're going to hit us by airplanes. They're planning to hit us by airplanes. And people told him to shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. And John O'Neill was driven out of the FBI. He took a security job in New York. He was the chief of security for the World Trade Center.
Oh, no.
He was on his second day on the job when 9/11 hit. And John O'Neill ran into the building trying to save people. He didn't make it.
Man, gosh, oh man.
So that's what Israel saw. Is that and that's the thing that people got to remember. This is Iran planned, funded, they trained by Iranian agents, and Iran gave the green light. So we can't exonerate Iran. I mean, they don't have the discipline to do this themselves. They employed tradecraft that we have never even seen in modern warfare. They had everything compartmented. So you're the paraglider, group. You're the naval attack, and you're the motorcycle crew. You're the fence busting, gang. And they trained them all, gave them explosives, gave them weapons, but they didn't know each other until they got the green light from Iran.
Wow.
It was showtime, and they all showed up. Many of them met for the first time in the battlefield.
Wow.
So it was Iran.
100%. And we saw just yesterday another one of Iran's proxies, a group called Al-Houthis.
You were talking about those at dinner the other night.
Yeah, this is a faction that has managed to gain control over most of Yemen over the last 9 years. They've been engaged in a war. Countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and others, including the United States, were helping them to sort of battle the Iranian influence. Unfortunately, Iran has poured a lot of resources, a lot of technology, a lot of money that they gained control over most of Yemen.
$6 billion worth, huh?
Exactly. And they were giving money to Iran. Thank you for bringing up the $6 billion, because that really makes no sense. So on one hand, we're supporting Israel. On the other hand, we're releasing funds to Iran. $6 billion that were released to a bank in Qatar, and that Iran can tap into. There's another $10 billion that is in the pipeline. These are from oil sales that were frozen in Iraq. They're also being released to Iran.
What was
But
the
it's humanitarian money.
Right, I was going to say, what was the justification for releasing that money?
Oh, it's going to be used for the Iranian people, to help the Iranian people. But it's interesting that immediately after the release of $6 billion, Iran gives the green light to attack Israel.
Let's go.
Right.
Well, now we're flush with cash.
Right.
Well, then you hear
We can afford a little proxy war here or there.
Yeah.
Congress is saying they want to take the $6 billion back, but it's already in Qatar, right?
It's already in banks in Qatar, and Iran said, it's too late. The minute it got deposited in banks in Qatar, Iran has access to it.
Boy.
Yeah.
Let's shift a little bit more focus. Gaza. All right. Hamas is there. I've watched a couple of the Netflix shows, Fauda and some of those, and they're going into Gaza, and it just looks like I don't want to go in there. This little strip of land is smaller than the county we live in. Our county's like 9 miles wide and about 30 miles tall. I mean, this is a small little piece of land with 2.3
2.4 million residents.
Residents there.
Yeah, you're right.
I see the exodus, and Israel said, "Get out of the northern part," and there's so many innocents that are trying to run away that they're scared to death. Are we going to get bombed by Israel, or are people going to kill us because we're leaving?
Well, they're right there in the crossfire.
They're right there, man. And from that perspective, Hamas. Let's talk about Gaza. Israel pulled out of Gaza 2000. What year? 3? 6?
Yeah, about 17 years ago.
Yeah. And said, okay, we're pulling out. We're going to supply your water. We're going to supply your utilities and all that. But you guys run the place, and we're doing it because we want peace. Is that generally correct?
It is, and you got to remember, Hamas was democratically elected. The people of Gaza voted Hamas. So Gaza Strip is out of control of the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority, under the leadership of Mohammed Abbas, they are in the West Bank. So, but Gaza said they wanted to self-determination, they wanted to self-rule, and they voted in Hamas. That's what people need to remember. Hamas is there by the choice of their residents.
Wow.
But I don't think people understand, though. It's not like voting here. Like, voting over there is not like it is here. You take it back to, like, the 1800s when we were voting in here. Like, that's...
Exactly. Hamas voted itself in.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean...
That would be more accurate.
Yeah, I mean, you either vote this way or we'll take your family out. Like,
Right.
Exactly. And then so they use this time to build tunnels. And the tunnel system is massive. It's mind-boggling. You won't believe it. Initially, there were just tunnels between the Gaza Strip and Egypt, where they would smuggle weapons and they would smuggle people, that kind of thing. There's an entire metro system under the entire Gaza Strip, under all these buildings, under all this infrastructure. There is a tunnel system in which they hide and they stage, they train, they have weapons, they can hide people. That's most likely where the hostages are. We have about 199 hostages that are being
It takes money, don't it?
It does take
To
money
build those tunnels.
So instead of using the resources that they had to dig, to make sure that there's a water infrastructure, electric infrastructure, and other facilities for the Palestinian people, they use those resources to gear up for war.
Yeah.
So they've been building up for war because, again, their entire existence was about the destruction of Israel.
well, and correct me if I'm wrong. Like, one of the reasons, like, you think 17 years, right? That's a pretty big cool-off period for most people, right?
Yeah.
Even if I got in an argument with Trey and it was so terrible,
17 years later,
go by,
we're having a beer.
we're not fist fighting over it,
No.
right? I mean, not
You're a
calling
very
it his
forgiving
birthday.
person. I mean, I'll leave it at least 18
Well, you're one
years.
guy I don't want to piss off, so I'll just end up missing somewhere. But, and you could pull it off. That's the thing.
That's a big body, bro.
I can neither confirm nor deny what happened to my enemies.
But this is a religious war. So 100 years in a religious war,
It's nothing.
It's nothing, right?
You
And that's
got
what
it.
people don't get. Like, they don't give a shit about the water and electric.
That's it.
Because they don't care. That's not what they're fighting for.
Yeah. And
What's the
Israel was providing the water and electricity
Yeah, okay, that's
to
what
the
I thought.
Right.
Gaza Strip.
But when you guys have been there, us three have not been to Israel yet. Isn't Israel really plush and green? It's the
Up
promised
toward
land.
the Sea of Galilee is gorgeous.
You would feel like you're in Europe.
Yeah.
Okay, and Hamas is desolate, is it? Or
Yes.
the Gaza is
That's-
desolate.
It is.
The
It
further
is.
south
It is.
you
And,
go,
and it's a mess. I've been to the Gaza Strip myself many times, and it is shocking that the basic infrastructure doesn't exist. Only the elite, only the Hamas leadership, they have the money and they control the money. In fact, when President Joe Biden said that we've negotiated a deal to let aid into Gaza, one of the stipulations is that let's make sure that it does not go to Hamas. Because
Good luck
they're
with
going to
that one.
control that. And
How do you police that? How do you police that?
theocracy.
It's impossible to police.
Yeah.
When they are the authority, they're the police, they're the military, they're the municipalities, they are the aid, they're the hospital. I mean, they control the whole Gaza Strip. So you can't prevent it from getting to Hamas. And that's the difficulty where Israel needs to be viewed and to do the right humanitarian thing. But let's remember, they live there. They know those people. They know the tactics of Hamas. We're looking at it from far away, and you can look, and rightfully so. When you see women and children, Palestinians are being killed, our heart goes out to them as well.
Right.
and we want to do the right humanitarian thing. But the reality that Israel is seeing on the ground, yes, we want to help these people, but we know that Hamas is going to take this aid. They're going to take that fuel so they can shoot more rockets,
Yeah.
so they can fire more, more weaponry at us.
You made a comment yesterday that this is Israel's land and has been promised for centuries. This isn't about land. This because the Gaza is not their land. It's not their promised land.
100%. This is not about land. This is, again, we go back to the religious aspects of this war. There was never a Palestinian state.
That's right.
in the land of Israel as we know it today. There were Palestinian people. There were nomads. But we go back to the Bible and we look at God's promised land, and the Israelis have been there, and they were a country, and they had kings, and they had rulers, they had an infrastructure.
Right.
And so to say that they're giving the impression that, well, Israel has taken over Palestine, that would be inaccurate. And after all of these years of struggle and pressure on Israel to provide a homeland to the Palestinians, Israel had in principle agreed to a Palestinian state, a two-state solution. In fact, I remember 1995, the Oslo Accord offered the Palestinians 95% of all the land that they claimed from the 1967 borders. They would give it back to them. The other 5% had to do with Jerusalem. We will give you East Jerusalem. You will have a capital in East Jerusalem, but not sovereignty.
Right.
They could not help themselves. By the time Yasser Arafat landed back in the Middle East, they started fighting Israel.
Wow.
Yeah.
They could have had this.
Right.
And this was dangerous even for Israel, where Rabin really took a risk. It would put the Palestinians on the Temple Mount.
Oh my.
They could literally just look down and shoot at Jews praying at the Wailing Wall.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they were willing to do that. Do you think that's going to happen now?
No.
After they just got backstabbed?
No.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay, we talked about Gaza because there's a couple things I noticed, and you talked about good and evil and a second ago. When I was in Israel a few years back, we landed in Tel Aviv, and we started our trip off up in the Galilee area, and
Beautiful
it was
area.
so peaceful, and where Jesus walked, where he talked, and all. I saw lemons like that big around, and, and all the olive trees and the date palms and all that. It was just gorgeous. And then as we started driving south to get more toward Jerusalem, and we crossed some of the checkpoints to go into the Palestinian areas, right, wrong, or indifferent, I felt this amazing peace. And then as soon as I drove through, the people were cordial, they were nice, but it wasn't quite as nice anymore, wasn't quite as pretty. So, and I felt this presence that stirred me inside.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does. And Trey, I felt the same thing too, because a lot of people have this vision of when I go to the Holy Land, and when I go to the place where the Sermon on the Mount, or when Jesus walked, or the Via Dolorosa, or other things, that I'm gonna feel this incredible spiritual sense of Christianity and where Christ was. Personally, I felt it was devoid of anything that resembled Christ.
Yeah. So we went to Bethlehem, and there's not one Jew that lives in Bethlehem, right? And
That's right.
And the two spots where they think Christ was born, the one that they built a church over in the cave and all that, and there was just tension in the whole town. And as soon as we, like I said, we were at the Sea of Galilee, and there was none of that. And then when we came through there, it was like, oh man, I
Guys,
feel
and it goes back to the scripture that says that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers in heavenly places. I've gone into cities where I'm like, my spirit, just like you, it's like, man, there's some evil going on here. I don't know what it is, but my spirit's groaning.
Yeah.
And then I've been to places where it's like, man, this is there must be something going on here, and that's spiritual and of God. And I think that's what you guys experience.
Yeah, and I feel like if Jesus were to walk the streets again of Jerusalem, he would. I mean, this is my Joseph's personal, take on this. Is he would say the same thing again? My house is a house of prayer, and you have turned it into a den of thieves.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, well, you mentioned yesterday, and I wanted to bring this up because, Hamas, 17, 18 years, okay, we're under peace. But now we're going to get into action. And you mentioned the crescent yesterday.
Yes.
Go into that a little bit, because is that crescent continuing to grow?
Yeah, this is what I referred to. Yes, you're
Yeah.
right. The Shia crescent, and the Shia crescent is supported by Iran. Iran is majority, is a Shia, and it's the largest Shia country in the Middle East. And Shia believe very different than Sunnis. The 21 other Arab countries in the Middle East are predominantly Sunni. But Iran is the most powerful country in the region today, particularly with their nuclear program. They have ambitions to spread Shiism and to control militarily, economically, with oil and resources all throughout the Middle East, with a very specific eye of surrounding Israel.
Yeah.
So this was not just about economic dominance. Of course, I mean, other nations do that. We see China growing each day and dominating the world, right? But theirs is a religious focus. So they have sought to control country by country of what we call, people who follow the Middle East closely, is a crescent, because it's in the shape of a crescent that starts from Lebanon, right north of Israel, and then goes east to Syria. They control that now, and then Iraq. No thanks to American presence in Iraq, we misread that one, and we when we left Iraq, we as if we handed over Iraq in a silver platter to Iran. So that bolstered their Shia crescent. In fact, as of yesterday, they just bombed the 2 U.S. bases that are in Iraq. Because Iran can do what they want in Iraq, so they control Iraq. And then they were trying to stir up trouble in Bahrain, in the Gulf.
So they're just working their way around.
They're working their way around, and then they managed to get the bottom of the Arabian Peninsula.
There you go.
The most strategic location was Yemen.
Yeah.
And over the last 9 years, they managed to control Yemen. That now we have even the Yemeni rebels that are there. They are a proxy Iranian force, are firing missiles and suicide drones into Israel, all the way from southern, from the southern Arabian Peninsula, northern Yemen.
How many miles is that? If you had to guess.
How many miles?
From southern to Israel.
From Yemen to Israel,
that's at least 1,200 miles.
Okay, so that's some major technology.
That's major technology, major missiles that we have not seen deployed. And we know the Yemenis can develop this.
Yeah.
I lived in Yemen for 2 years, and we know the Yemenis don't have the technology. They don't have the infrastructure. This is all Iranian technology, Iranian training, and probably Iranian operators.
Yeah, I think a lot of us just lose sight because we just assume everybody else has access that we have access.
Right.
You think about it, like even the most desolate places in the U.S. have access to things that these countries don't have access to.
Right.
Because their governments don't provide that, right? They don't give them what they need.
Exactly.
Like, so if the government of that country can't do it, then where do they get it from?
Right.
It's not like these terrorist organizations are really highly funded. I mean, when you think about the planes and stuff we fly are billions of dollars a piece. Like, it's not just a little airplane that's going up there. These fighter jets are $1 billion. These rockets that go 1,200 miles, what are they, millions, if not billions of dollars for one rocket.
Absolutely.
So it's not a cheap task.
No.
And for a terrorist organization that has no way to generate revenue other than steal it, they have to get it somewhere.
Look at Lebanon. It's a failed state. The Lebanese economy is struggling. People can't find, commodities, basic things. They can't withdraw more than $300 from their bank account today. Yet, Hezbollah announces that they have 150,000 rockets that they're able to destroy Israel with.
And they hadn't started yet.
They have not started yet. Where do you think they're getting that from? So it goes to your point about the money and the funding of all of this.
What can we do as like Christians
Yeah, I was going
specifically
to try to shift
to try and help this?
There's a sense of urgency. And it's shameful on my part that this sense of urgency had to come after listening to you yesterday. And it's like, I'm glad we're doing this because this needs to get out for Christians to say, look, this could be it. There's a sense of urgency within my spirit right now.
Absolutely. And this is different than anything else. I mean, this is a game changer.
Yeah, you mentioned yesterday, you said Israel, Middle East is never going to be the same after what happened 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely. The Middle East will never be the same again. Israel will never be the same again.
Right.
This is a game changer. This is the United States' relationship with the Middle East and how this affects the United States, that has shifted. So we Christians more than anybody can understand this from another lens, the spiritual lens, and from the biblical lens. And we need to go back to the Bible and read about what does it say about this, but also what should be our Christian response.
Right.
You know, all the way from, you know, okay, it's good to pray for Israel and feel good that we did something, but when we are facing something like this is drastic. We have got to be prepared. Israel is being challenged. The existence of Israel is being challenged. Are we being challenged here? I believe so. Our beliefs, what we believe in, and how we stand to society and culture. Are we prepared? Do we know our faith enough to be able to guide other people around us
Yes,
exactly.
when our faith is under attack? Are we going to withstand the test of time?
Right. Yeah. Should it be one of those, let's just go blow Gaza off the map? Or it should be, we need to pray for the terrorist guys that they change. What are your, being entrenched over there for so many years, you have a feeling for just
I think it's a little bit of both, because I mean, we do read like in Deuteronomy 20 and other passages in the Bible where there is such a thing as a justified war. When God calls his people, he goes, when the enemy wishes to harm your innocent within your house and they're coming against you, you know, God is calling us to war, but there's a different word for the different type of killing. This is not murder. It is defense. It is war. So absolutely Israel has the right to defend itself, and we should stand with Israel and support it. But at the same token, so and these are not mutually exclusive, as Christians, yes, we are called to pray for even the enemy.
Right.
Yep.
To pray for Hamas,
Right.
to pray for those killers, that they will get to know the Lord, and that God would reveal himself, and he would blind their sights from attacking innocent people, to include the innocent people of the Gaza Strip. I mean, somebody told me the other day, said, well, how do we help the Palestinians? I said, if you want to really help the Palestinians, help them to get rid of Hamas.
Yeah.
So we need to pray Hamas out of power.
Right.
Let Israel do what Israel does best. They understand the situation on the ground. And our job is to pray for them and pray for peace and pray for the enemy. Don't ever underestimate the power of prayer, but we need to take it seriously. This is not just prayer in passing.
Something
We
we
need to
haven't-
intercede for them.
Something we haven't taken seriously is, and people are going to be thrown into eternity in an instance, whether it's war, whatever it is. And we've got an open border at our southern border there's men of fighting age that are coming across, and it's proven that there's Hamas that are coming across our border. So things could happen within the United States, and I know you believe that because we've talked about that.
absolutely.
But what do you think is the solution for that?
This is a very complicated thing, not just Hamas. You have Iranian agents, IRGC, Quds Force operatives that are coming from the southern borders. I mean, and they are up to no good. They're planning something here in the homeland. That's why when you saw the FBI Director Wray the other week has given also a very rare warning that the homeland is at risk, that things could happen here, attacks could happen here. It's concerning because of the sheer number of people who are coming from our southern border.
Right.
And some analysts in Washington and the State Department and others have said, well, you know, look, you got to expect a certain percentage of bad people that are going to be embedded in.
What's common sense, right?
Right.
Like, I mean,
but
no shit.
what's 2%, you know, of bad guys?
2%
Well-
of 3.6 million people or whatever.
360,000 or
That's a lot of people.
120,000.
How many people did it take to plan 9/11?
19.
19 carried it out.
Carried it out.
Yeah.
Well, and you also, I mean, you have the population of the states that sympathizes anyway. I mean, there are people here that were born here that have the same religious view. They just can't get away with it because they don't have the numbers,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes.
like, you just start pulling those together, and now you start giving them the leadership of how to pull it off.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just like any other extremist group. I mean, you go to the whites too. You go to the KKK. I mean, they organize, they do their thing, right? I mean, that doesn't make it right, but this is a different group now that's not only anti-Christian, they're anti-America.
Yes.
So they're looking at it a whole different way.
Let me bring it even closer to Florida. I mean, we had somebody who attacked the Pulse nightclub a few years ago here in Orlando.
Yeah.
He was Palestinian. And he was stirred by his wife, who was also a Palestinian, who was, supported the jihad and hated the United States. You know, people try to chug it off as, an attack on LGBTQ community.
No.
While that was the case, that was not his intended target initially. He wanted to carry out a terrorist attack in America. This was an attack on the homeland. This is an attack that affects all Americans.
Right.
It was the largest attack since 9/11. And it happened here in Florida.
We live in a county that's got the space industry, all these government contractors, Blue Origin, SpaceX, L3 Harris, Grumman, all those. They're here in our county.
Yes.
You told me that the other day, and you recognize it when you see it.
Yes. This is more of a counterintelligence. So
Right.
we have a counterterrorism problem that we
Right.
just talked about.
Right.
But counterintelligence, and that is countries that are stealing our secrets, that are trying to compromise our national security.
Right.
And they are here and they're active. There are currently active operations by China and Russia in Brevard County.
Right.
This is not in theory. We're not just talking about the Cold War
Right.
when there was a Soviet espionage. This is happening here, and it is something that we have not recognized, which was Russia and China have declared war on the United States, that they want to replace us as a superpower. They've declared this war. The only problem is that we are not treating it as a war. We're not responding as if they had declared war on us.
Right.
It happens every day.
Wow.
We see it here in restaurants and in the local community where we recognize intelligence operations. How do I recognize it? That's what we used to do overseas. So we see the Chinese and Russians and their agents are trying to recruit engineers and trying to steal secrets. They're literally hanging from trees with listening devices around some of our tech companies here in Brevard.
Oh, I'm sure.
Trying to listen in, trying to recruit people, trying to steal. They go around whenever there's a launch. It's really
A big gala, a fundraising gala, or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, making those relationships. It's fascinating to me, and it's happening right here, and we don't even think about it. For the Christian that's sitting at home, a spiritual leader of his home, his family, what we're talking about today, what would your words of encouragement be to them as far as looking at what's happening in Israel right now? Is a word of encouragement, a word of warning, a word of take heed? What's your thoughts on that?
it's a word of being the spiritual man, the spiritual head of your household. Lead your family into prayer. Lead them into intercession. Prepare your family of what is to come. Understand these cultural wars that are around us, and how do we respond? We respond by getting our families ready, our children, and embedding the biblical principles in them, and doing something, and not just being a spectator.
Right.
We're all called to be warriors.
Yeah.
We're all called to be ambassadors, the salt and light.
Fantastic, man. This is awesome. I know you're going to come back and join us. Great friend, great insight. And guys, just check us out, impactministries.org. Go to our, sign up for our newsletter, and then also shoot us an email. Just shoot us an email just saying, hey, this is where I'm hurting, this is where I'm confused. And if you have a question about what we're talking about today, I know who to send it to, so to get some answers. So check that out. Any other thoughts, guys, before we wrap it up?
You and Michelle are posting stuff regularly on your. So you want to give your sites, or is that something you want?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn,
Okay.
Joseph Assad. My wife, Michelle, is MichelleRigbyAssad.com. She has a great website and constantly posting on the current affairs, what's going on in the Middle East.
Gotcha.
And it's truth.
It is all about the truth,
Right.
and it's Christ-centered.
Thank you, brother.
Other thing
Appreciate
is, you can check out their story of how they rescued Christians from as the ISIS was circling around them in Iraq. That was on 2020, right?
2020.
Also,
So,
the story of you in the schoolyard is amazing, and that's a miracle in itself that we can share at
Well, the
another
fact
time.
that I'm here, it is by the grace of God.
Amen.
So it is an honor.
Yeah, Joseph, you have one of the most unconventional paths to the CIA that I've ever heard. And so you were studying to be a pastor, right?
Yes, I did study biblical studies and some piano.
Okay. Was there ever a time when you were overseas and you were being tailed by somebody, or you were in danger and you thought, man, just think I could have been pastoring a church right now. Boy, did I luck out.
Yeah. All right.
Exactly.
Well, amazing time, my friend. Thanks so much. Good luck in all your travels, and I know we'll get you back in here very, very soon.
Thank you for having me.
So check us out, guys. We'd love to see you. Give us a like and a share. It costs you absolutely nothing. And go to our website. As we have a November 11th, Veterans Day. We're going to have a Veterans Day breakfast where we're going to honor the veterans and also have some discussion for guys from veterans that have struggled getting back into civilian life, and it's an effort called MPACT Warriors, and you can go to our website, click on that, and register for that November 11th Veterans Day right here in Brevard County, Florida. So with that said, I'm Trey.
I'm Michael.
I'm Brad.
I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Joseph.
We are the
Cussin Christians.
Great job, bro.
All right.
Man,
Man, you got some stories, bro.
Thank you.
totally amazing.
Oh, you guys are kind.
No.